country mentioned in the Bible possesses the sacred ark of the covenant, the most ancient biblical artifacts. But be remembered, the ark, it cannot be conquered. So all Ethiopians, those at home and those abroad, must unite.
Tennis Ellen, greetings to my noble Christian family of clergy members today. Please read the book of Malachi chapter 4 verse 6, which state, "The great universal human rights judgment, decision-making day of the sovereign Lord, political master. Behold, I am going to send you Elijah, Eliah, the human right prophet before the coming of the great and terrible universal human rights judgment day of the sovereign Lord." 6. He, Ethiopian Shiloh, will ecclesiastically restore the hearts of the fathers bishops to the children congregations, and the hearts of the children congregations to the fathers bishops, so that I, Emperor of Ethiopia, will not have to come and diplomatically smite the earth. 193 member nation states with a global Jesuit inequality course, IMF globalization policies. As the coming Solomonic root of David, he who is well-pleasing to the emperor's UN law in Ethiopia, with lawful global unification in human rights works. We beseech the Ethiopian Orthodox Church clergy to prepare themselves for the divine manifestation of an Ethiopian Shiloh, human rights defender for humanity. As we ecclesiastically request a nibiru-id, special consecration, faithfully, to travel back home to our mother church in Axum, Ethiopia in flesh, political status diplomatically, for a grand Ethiopian coronation, Lord's Sabbath as the metaphysical fulfillment of Ethiopian prophecy. For only the Ethiopian Orthodox faith, expectation of prophet to come alone, can lawfully coronate our coming Solomonic Christian King, ecclesiastical private diplomat, into global commerce, as a legitimate international political stone, UN law. Hence, since a divine promise was given towards the imperial Ethiopian throne of David, which shall not be without male heirs, emperors, until our long-awaited Ethiopian Shiloh majestically appear, we wish to share our divine Ethiopian testimony as the Solomonic heir apparent who is now here. However, before we can ecclesiastically ascend the imperial throne of David in the East Ethiopia, we must first diplomatically overcome and conquer this global Jesuit financial system of debt, slavery and unlawful usury on earth. 193 member nation states. For with religious and political persecutions being conducted by Jesuit-taught politicians in Jamaican Parliament today, we are being openly violated, through the willful political ignorance of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Charter and how to implement international diplomatic claims. Human rights violation equals lawful diplomatic compensation, as human rights are internationally secured and protected for all. Therefore, we beseech your noble diplomatic assistance as equally priceless and divine human beings, to lawfully remedy our human rights situation in Jamaican territory immediately, as we are outside the political bounds of diplomatic protection by the state, and lawfully. We are ecclesiastically challenging the global Jesuit status quo in our modern world of social democracy, political choices, as we have renounced our involuntary debtor citizen status to become an official human rights defender, private humanitarian diplomat, with diplomatic immunity. For if only by the consent of the government attains international political legitimacy, then the government of Jamaica is not legitimate by any lawful political means, as no one in Jamaica ever voted for a Jesuit-taught Governor-General to represent an absentee de facto queen, tyrannically. Henceforth, with one universal human rights claim to an indigenous identity, foreign Ethiopian dignitary, by an Ethiopian sage prophet who has manifested to diplomatically conquer the Jesuit financial enemies, bankers, over humanity. We will break open the Solomonic Christian seal in collective security, all for one Christos and one Christos for all, to formulate a new debt-free line of Judo-Christos order in political reality. Minus Jesuit state coercion, which we can mutually reject as a legal and lawful international human rights remedy. Please comprehend that Jesuit-taught politicians in Jamaican Parliament are not competent enough to adjudicate international diplomatic cases at present, as none of them were ever taught how to implement their own international human rights diplomatic privileges as indigenous individuals, African expatriates, in global commerce. Therefore, by the divine spirit intelligence of my mouth and by the actual essence return on an Ethiopian Shiloh in flesh political status, we will vanquish the global Jesuit status quo in political oneness, TYRANNY. For if no one, Ethiopian Shiloh, ecclesiastically stand up to make a diplomatic claim as to their own indigenous human identity, or to their own sovereign, politically free, human existence in our wonderful modern world of social democracy, political choices, then no one can make a legitimate diplomatic claim that the universal human rights diplomatic privileges have been violated arbitrarily, while remaining as willful corporate Jesuit taxpayer debtor citizens serf under an unlawful IMF financial system of debt, usury, and inequality. However, with one universal human rights diplomatic claim against global Jesuit fascism, IMF globalization policies in world trade commerce, we the people will create an international political ripple effect that will spiritually, intellectually shake and diplomatically rattle like dominoes lined up in sync. For we urgently seek a diplomatic rapture, lawful separation of the EOTC Church from the voice of the meek, politically powerless, as only they have the international judicial authority under Article 21.3. The will of the people shall be the basis of all authority of government entities, to peacefully depose and democratically overcome global Jesuit supremacy superimposed by thieves' bankers. Please be advised, transgressions against the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Charter is an international political felony for corrupt politicians, clergy, etc., who remain politically blind, negligent. As Article 30 of the UDHR Charter of Fundamental Equality stand firm, as it legislates international morality, goodness, for every human mind willing to learn. Article 30 clearly states, nothing in this Universal Declaration of Human Rights Charter of Fundamental Equality for all may be erroneously interpreted as implying for any bankrupt nation, state, legal fiction, group, Jesuit bankers, or person, Jesuit pope, any international right, diplomatic privilege, to engage in any political activity or to perform any diplomatic act aimed at the destruction of any of the international rights and fundamental commercial freedoms set forth herein. Therefore, it is a gross violation and serious humanitarian breach, which creates instant political criminals, human rights violators, of those Jesuit-taught politicians who violate in willful ignorance with impunity, whether due to their own lack of implementing the UDHR law of fundamental equality, or in their own political negligence when claiming plausible deniability, which is an international liability, felony. We hope and pray that we can adjudicate our universal human rights claims promptly, so that together in oneness, TYRANNY, as a global Christian, followers of Christos today, family, we can begin to spiritually, intellectually build, politically develop and diplomatically create a new debt-free global resource-based cashless economy as humanity's lawful diplomatic inheritance. In collective security, all for one Christos and one Christos for all, and faith, expectation of profit to come. For with the voice of the people representing the sovereign voice of God, over global Jesuit financial fraud, we will regain our international political interest entitlement to intellectual property, which will be claimed for one and all. Seller. P.S. just as Emperor Haile Selassie I was a Grand Master Freemason in global commerce, is the same diplomatic way in which we must honor his most prodigal son of humanity, Ethiopian Shiloh, with good human rights works deed. For there is only one diplomatic way to effect real international political change within global commerce, and that is by the sovereign voice of the people exercising the universal human rights diplomatic privileges to indigenous self-worth, inherent dignity. For the sovereign ecclesiastical power, human rights political knowledge over self, and divine authority behind the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Charter of Fundamental Equality for All, is that in human rights righteousness, legal and lawful uprightness, the sovereign voice of the governed can democratically exalt 193 bankrupt member nation-states from unlawful constitutional, mind and body, debt bondage, and live, as this is the divine gift, law of equality, that only our UN lawgiver alone can give. Selah. Why not reflect on our global financial crisis as it appears, so we can lawfully appoint and legally commission a universal Redeemer, Lion of Judah world banker, as the coming Christos, Ethiopian Christ, without fear, false expectations appearing real, to diplomatically make us all recognized children of elect of God and Christus, Ethiopian Christ's ecclesiastical co-heirs, private humanitarian UN diplomats. Johannes, John 6:33, revised in Ethiopian Spectacles for Real Ecclesiastical Change, Choosing Humanity a New Global Economy. John chapter 6 verse 33, Ethiopian English Standard Version, ESV. 33 For the sacred bread, redemption doctrine and law of elect of God the Father Majesty, UN lawgiver of the 20th century, is he, Ethiopian Shiloh, who comes down from heaven, Empire of Ethiopia, and gives a debt-free diplomatic life, living in full equality, to the bankrupt modern world of social democracy, political choices. Ecclesiastical note. The Ethiopian Holy Scriptures, 81 books, is like a modern-day movie script that actors can play for profit. Yet only our coming Ethiopian Shiloh can manifest it, prophecy, into reality, as the one coming lawgiver and judge, decision-maker, with lawful ecclesiastical merit. For the divine reality belongs to the coming Christos, Ethiopian Christ, eternally. Isaiah 42. Ethiopian English Standard Version, ESV. The Sovereign Lord's chosen servant, human rights ambassador. 42 Behold my servant, human rights ambassador, whom I ecclesiastically uphold with a Solomonic seal, hereditary Christian title. My chosen prodigal son, in whom my soul delights, enlightens. I have put my spirit, intelligence, upon him. He, Ethiopian Shiloh, will bring forth international justice to the bankrupt nation-states, government service corporations. 2 He will not cry aloud to lift up his voice, or make it heard in the street. 3 A bruised reed he will not break, and a faintly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth international justice today. 4 He, Ethiopian Shiloh, will not grow faint to be discouraged by Jesuit-taught politicians in political negligence, violation, till he has established international justice in the earth, 193 member nation-states, and the Caribbean islands wait for the implementation of his universal human rights law of fundamental equality for all. 5 Thus says elect of God the Father Majesty, UN lawgiver of the 20th century, the sovereign Lord, political master, who created the heavens, Empire of Ethiopia, divine providence, and stretched them out autonomously, who spread out the earth, 193 member nation-states, and what indigenous resources that comes from it naturally, who gives spiritual breath, political voice, to the people of humanity, 7 billion people on N, and spirit, intelligence, to those human rights defenders who diplomatically walk in it. 6 I am the sovereign Lord, political master, elect of God the Father Majesty, UN lawgiver of the 20th century, I have called you in human rights righteousness, legal and lawful uprightness. I will take you by the diplomatic hand and ecclesiastically keep you. I will give you as a human rights covenant, sacred agreement, for the people of humanity, 7 billion. A universal human rights light, law of equality, for the bankrupt nation states, government service corporations. 7. To diplomatically open the spiritual, intellectual, third eyes that are politically blind. To bring out the mental prisoners, debtor citizen tax-paying slaves, for the dungeon, global financial apostasy. For the Jesuit mental prison, those Jesuit taxpayers who sit in global IMF darkness, civil death. 8. I am the sovereign Lord, that is my name, hereditary Christian title. My glory, magnificence in law, and I will not give to another unholy seer, false pope, for profit. Nor my praise to carve Jesuit created Roman images as idols. 9. Behold, the former things, global financial apostasy, will come to pass. A new debt-free diplomatic things I now declare. Before they ecclesiastically spring forth, I tell you of them as prophetical evidence. Selah, meditate on these words. UDHR Charter. In human rights faith. Expectation of prophet to come.
Ilja, Rastafari, prejudice opposed. Ooh, yeah. It's a mask and set a matagana. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free. We reaffirm today, in the name of principle and right, our opposition to prejudice, wherever and in whatever form it may be found. And particularly, do we rededicate ourselves to the eradication of racial discrimination from this continent. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free. We can never rest content with our achievements, so long as men in any part of Africa assert on racial grounds their superiority over least of our brothers. Racial discrimination constitutes a negation of the spiritual and psychological equality which we have vowed to achieve, and a denial of the personality and dignity which we have struggled to establish as Africans. Jamaica. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free. Black Liberation Day, Black Liberation Day. Oh, what a great day that must be, when Africa is free.